Of course.
Welcome to another Sunday Superversive live stream. I'm your host, Benjamin Wheeler, fresh as a daisy from a nap, and I'm joined today with Anthony Marquetta and Ken Dickinson, my co-writers on Pinkerton's Ghosts, and we already have a question. Eldritch Fan says, how come only the first 52 episodes are available on Apple Podcasts? And the answer is that I haven't updated Acast in quite some time, but I will be getting to it in the future. How are you two gentlemen doing today?
Reasonably well, thank you.
Excellent.
Well, as you know, Ben, I have never had a bad day in my life.
I
Oh,
know.
Lord.
I know.
It's that degree of optimism that causes a man to drink.
Drink.
But the drinking is why I've never had a bad day in my... No, I'm kidding. Anyway.
Excellent.
Uh,
Very good. So I suppose a few things are in order. First, it's taking us a while to have one of these. And a lot of that is just to do with how busy we've been at the beginning of the year. It's no secret that I felt quite ill for a month, 2 months, somewhere in there, depending on how you take recovery. And honestly, there's just a lot of stuff we've been working on that I'm not confident in announcing, just because it'd be like, 1 week I'd do this and I'd announce it and then I'd have to push it back. But we are, excuse me, oh, there's that nap coming in. But we are fulfilling our obligations here. I have put up the links in the right places, and if you can, I look forward to you joining us. Though I do need to update Acast sooner than later.
because I'm not fond of any Apple products, I've never used Acast. I think it is the devil.
It is not an Apple product, but it allows me to distribute the product to Spotify, Apple, and a
Yeah, to
whole
be
bunch of
honest, I
other
didn't even know
places.
what ACAST was.
I have discussed it with you guys many times.
I forget
No,
every
I
single
knew
time.
that we posted... Yeah, I knew that you, updated it to ACAST. I just didn't know what it was for. I just figured it was, another generic streaming service.
Right.
Fair enough. And perhaps it is. Perhaps it is.
Well, today's the Pinkerton's Ghost stream. Do we have any questions that you've already written up for us, Ben? Or are we going to rely on the audience to supply us with our topics tonight?
We'll find out. Let me just check some places. The first, let's see here. Excuse me. The first question we have is for me is how do you guys feel the season is going? I think it's going quite well, all things considered, for the real life events in the past month, 2 months. I like how the character arcs are growing, how the stories and horror is being developed, needed by our capable hands. But what are you guys' opinions on it?
I like the story. I definitely think I enjoy Sean's character arc much more this season than previous seasons. Jim is currently in his holding pattern of no one really knows what he's going to do with magic, which is exactly where I like it to be. Because even I don't know what's going to happen to Jim. Since I've made no bones about the fact that I've based Jim on myself. Really, what happens to Jim is dependent on how good my life is going.
Excellent. Very good.
So, yeah, good question. So, as far as Sean's character arc goes, I mean, season 1 was intentionally, I think I remember telling you guys this, he didn't really have a character arc in season 1, or a very subtle one. His character arc in season 1 was he was new to the Pinkertons and establishing himself. By the end of season 1, he kind of establishes himself, but it's also a little bit smoke and mirrors, because part of the reason he's doing better is because of Morgana's spell of protection.
Right.
That sort of thing. Also, Raul Nienzi has shown up. Hey, Raul!
Hey,
I hope
Roll.
I'm pronouncing your name right. I'm probably not. Sorry about that. But Rawl is one of the early stars of the pulp revolution. So
Fantastic. Welcome
glad to
back.
see him here. Uh, I haven't seen him on the live stream in a while. I don't think. I'm pretty sure he's been here
Anthony,
before though.
your microphone is skipping again.
It's never going to end, Ken. You just have to live with it.
No, it was doing very, very well up until a few minutes ago.
It will end. It'll
There
end.
it is.
Just it'll end in a while.
Hmm.
Sorry, Ben. I'm trying. I promise I'm trying. I really am. I bought a new mic and everything. Anyway, to finish what I was saying, like Sean's whole character arc, that was season 1, and then
Mhm.
season 2 was about now he's more established and things start to get harder for him immediately. You know, in the very first episode of the season, he loses an eye. Now as the season's gone on, he's being tracked by special forces agents and has so far survived by the skin of his teeth. And then later in the season, he's going to deal with supernatural threats on a higher level than he's faced before as well, is the idea. As he tries to juggle this with his relationship with Violet, who has become kind of a favorite character of my own to have and to write, because I've said this before, but I'm actually a big fan of romance as subplots. I think that they add a lot to characters, so I'm glad that Sean's getting that. And all of this is starting to pile up on Sean. You know, the stress of trying to keep a relationship while all of these supernatural events are hitting him harder and harder than they ever have before.
Right.
And he's trying to juggle it with his moral system, which is starting to kind of crack in the face of enemies that are far more ruthless and dangerous than he's dealt with already.
Sure.
And I don't think that Sean would ever think of this that directly. If that makes sense, this is all stuff that I could say as his creator and the author that I'm putting in there, but Sean would never have this direct of a thought about it. Like, he wouldn't say his moral system was being tested. He would claim he was still holding to the same moral system, right?
Mm-hmm.
And in a sense, he is. Like, he's certainly trying at least, but as these things happen, trying to think of how to put it. As all of this stuff happens to him, it's really starting to affect his mental state. So, and I'm enjoying writing that, and it's going to culminate, hopefully, in a big way in season 3.
Fantastic.
I will not promise that Sean won't die, because in the world of the Pinkerton's ghosts, death does not necessarily mean the end. But but I will promise that Sean will be in season 3.
Ooh, I like that. That's a good way of teasing things. I won't promise he won't. I like that.
I think that's a fair way to do it, and in the world of Pinkerton's ghost, I think it's perfectly fair to say that a ghost detective is certainly, at least theoretically, possible.
Hey, I think we've all established that Pale Realms of Shade is one of Pinkerton's Ghost's favorite short stories, if not a foundational document.
Pale Realms of Shade makes me frustrated and sad because I know for a fact from reading it that John would be absolutely perfect for the show, but
he's too
busy on his Star Wars, not Star Wars story.
Tragic.
He has too much to finish.
Rawl has a couple other things to say. Don't forget, I have a book out now, Pearls of Sasha Reed. Thanks for letting us know. Actually, I'll talk to Ben about that, but yeah, and he says I've been promoting it for a while now. That would be great. And he also says, I like a good romantic subplot too. Well, yeah, think about Empire Strikes Back. Those are considered boys' adventure stories, but the romantic subplot is arguably the most beloved part of that movie. And for good reason. It's wonderful.
I guess very arguably.
Yeah. I actually would argue at the very least that the best line in the film comes from that romance.
Is it, I love you, I know?
Yes.
Yeah, okay, fair. I'll give you that. It's definitely one of the more, and I know I am your father is definitely one of the most memorable, but I love you, I know is definitely the best.
That is the most memorable. That's fair to say.
It's also the most misquoted.
To be honest, yeah, since when I watched that movie, that line had already been spoiled for me, and so it's a little bit unfair, as it is for
Well,
basically everyone. So it did not have the impact on me that I'm sure it had for the original audience.
oh, sure.
Uh,
I do have friends that
and
watched it when it first came out, and they tell me that that was one of the most shocking moments in all of cinema, which I'm sure it was. I'm just way too young for any kind of experience with it.
yeah, my experience, I don't have the nostalgia factor with Star Wars. I agree with ER, our boy ER's take on Star Wars, which is that I don't really consider myself like a huge Star Wars fan. I respect the original trilogy for
Right.
capturing the quality of timelessness. I think that A New Hope or original Star Wars, whatever you want to call it, is a very good movie. Empire Strikes Back is a great movie, and
Yes.
Return of the Jedi works.
Yeah, it's okay.
Oh, I think that's the best way. Like, as far as a conclusion goes, if that were the last Star Wars movie ever made, as it should have been, it would have been fine. Yeah.
Oh yes. By the same token, I'm starting to really appreciate the prequels as they've come out. They're incompetently made, but at least they're made with some degree of passion.
It's
I
almost
do and I
like
don't. Like,
after the abuse of the modern Star Wars, the gentle caress of somebody who's clumsy but loving is much more preferable.
yes.
Sure.
I have mixed feelings. I don't think it's possible to argue that the prequels are good. I think that Plinkett's reviews pretty much demolish that.
Sure.
But I would argue, and I will argue, that the prequels had good ideas. And if they were
Yes.
substantially, like, reworked and rewritten, they
Mhm.
could have been good. Like, I have, for example, I have argued with people, like, people have said that the scene where they go, Anakin, we'll let you into the council, but we will not be granting you the rank of master. And I've had people criticize Anakin's reaction to that. And I said, believe it or not, I am actually going to defend this. I think that was exactly right, and that was actually a fairly clever bit of writing, right? Like that Anakin's pride getting ahead of him, the fact
Sure.
that this would wound him, but that they're trying to do this for the opposite reason, to like throw him a bone, but not to, you know, let him all the way in, but also not disrespect him. But of course, Anakin doesn't see it that way. Like all
Sure.
of that stuff, like those are all good ideas. And the
Right.
idea of paralleling Anakin's fall with like a fall of the Roman Empire type thing, all good ideas.
Absolutely.
The problem is that it's just horribly executed for the most part.
Very true. And that's why the Clone Wars series did such a fantastic job of kind of rectifying a lot of those wrongs. Is
I
it
haven't
perfect?
seen
No.
it, so I can't comment.
Tragedy.
Are you referring to the Genndy Tartakovsky Clone Wars or the CGI Clone Wars?
No, the CGI Clone Wars. The Gennady Tarkovsky are more just action without any real substance.
Fair enough. It's good action though, because it's Genndy
Sure.
Tartakovsky. But
Sure. But still, point
I'm
remains.
warn you right now, a great deal of Jack Morrow's action and timing is inspired by how Gennady Tartakovsky does his action.
Oh, really?
Yeah, like if you look at it, I know this isn't quite the same what we're talking about, but we're gonna move on because Star Wars. We're not.
no, that's fine. You should.
So I have when I write action, I have specific beats that I do action to, and I usually have to listen to music to get it right. I want about the same distance of a musical track between action events, with a sliding scale up to, as you do, the up to the climax. So when it comes to things like my contribution to the first Fantastic Schools, where I wrote Doom Garden, which is basically what if the Doom Marine was a gardener at a finishing school for wizards. I specifically put it to, the Doom 2016 soundtrack. I made sure that the action specifically had the same sort of musical beats for it, and it was difficult, but it was all right.
As Ben, I just want to, as you have asked me to do the audio read for it, I would like to, of course, nod that it is indeed an excellent a little short story that if you guys have not listened to or read, you absolutely should.
Oh yeah. I'll actually link it. It's just nice. It's one of the things for it. But the thing is that um, the audience, the reviewers who did mention it, kind of didn't get it. Like
Mm,
Jaji and a few other people were kind of in the joke.
right.
They understood it as not quite a joke,
Mm,
but very much like in reality, these wizard schools are going to be very dangerous places, and people think crazy things are going to happen, and the gardener is going to be much abused by the students more than anything else.
exactly.
Uh, and I mean that humorously, but
Of course.
it's you know, like it's how would you take a character from that stuff and introduce him into that sort of world?
Mm,
Well, he wouldn't really deal as well as smoothly as everything else. So when it comes to Jack Morrow's action, I can't do the same
mm,
in a shorter time frame. Like I had a very generous time frame for Doom Garden,
sure.
but for the needs of the story and the and the needs to have make sure that there's a coherent plot from episode to episode, I
Mm,
generally kind of shorten it up a bit. So I instead of making it about the music, I make it about the beats of how both Jack and his opponent move. Like
mm,
with Gennady, there's a very specific formula that he has expanded out in great deals. The first bit is that there's beats between action and moving. But when the violence is there, the violence is intense until it's time to have another beat. For example, one of the best scenes in cartoon television is Jack being pursued by the daughters of Aku, where there
Jack?
are Jack, Samurai Jack,
Oh, okay.
uh, where he runs through. There's moments of extreme violence. There's moments of silence where he waits for the next attack. Then there's more violence. Um, then he's hiding somewhere. Then it's up. He's moving. It's a motion. It's motion that continues forward. While the daughters of Aku are pursuing him. Then it's
Mm,
silent for a while both sides are hiding and playing hide and seek. Then
mm,
there's action, 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 action. He escapes, and then there's the great scene where there's all these tombs and he's hiding in one of them and they're homing in on his location. Action, 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 action. He kills one of the daughters of Aku and realizes he's killed his first human. And there's a
ooh,
moment where he's just quiet for a bit. And then,
mm,
instead of action, it's actually a slow scene which builds up to his escape. So I kind of play off those
Yeah,
ideas um, as best I can within the short
that was
story medium.
arguably the best. Yeah, those were arguably the two best episodes of the entire show too.
mm,
Uh,
Hmm.
so and I highly recommend to anybody who likes action, action stories, honestly, like action media, to watch at least the first like 3 episodes of season 5 of Samurai Jack. To be honest, I recommend the entire season. Uh, I liked all of it, including the finale. But
Because
Mm.
I've never
even
watched
though
it, I think I should recommend to the audience. It is currently all 5 seasons currently streaming on HBO Max, and one season each streaming on DirecTV, Adult Swim's streaming platform, and Spectrum On Demand. Continue.
yeah, thank you.
Of
So
course.
season 5 is really excellent. I highly recommend it. See, the thing is, when I learned one of the big things this season that you like charged me with, and that hopefully I've kind of done, is to learn how to write action better.
Mm,
This was like a big problem with me, and it still does not come naturally to me. So, for example, the story, which I consider one of probably my scariest story, and one of my better stories, Dark Side of the Mind, I wrote in one sitting like the day after I finished my previous story,
Mhm.
because like almost no action. It's just kind of a stream of consciousness monologue by a villain, actually, by Sean's evil doppelganger, because we pulp baby.
You know it.
So Sean has an evil doppelganger. Anyway, the entire story is kind of a stream, almost not quite stream of consciousness. There is a direct plot line, but it's a monologue from villain. So I wrote that in one sitting. There was like almost no action in it, and I think it's one of my better stories, and it's certainly, in my opinion, anyway, the scariest story that I've written. I think it's genuinely pretty creepy.
Huh.
It
I
creeped me out a
enjoyed it.
little writing it.
Sure.
I'm
You voicing Evil Sean is one of your best voices.
I appreciate that.
Absolutely.
Yeah, it was. It creeped me out a little writing it. In fact, I mentioned before that I actually it occurred to me as I was writing it that I think that the realistic actions of the villains would have actually been worse than what I portrayed in the story, and I toned it down. But it was still pretty creepy to me.
Sure.
That I wrote in one, like the day after I wrote the previous story, and Ben was kind of surprised. I'm normally not that fast.
Mm,
Contrast this. Sorry, Ben. Uh, contrast this with the last story that I wrote, Special Forces 2, was like a solid week later than I wanted it to be, because Special Forces 2 was lots and lots of action.
Mhm.
Now, and I'm just not as good at writing action. With that said, I think I'm a lot better at writing action scenes now, and I think that part of the whole point of the season that Ben kind of taxed me with as this is your job for the season, kind of get better at writing action because you're going to need to write more action. And he's right. And in Special Forces and Special Forces 2, what I realized was that in order for action to hit,
Mhm.
you need to describe how it makes the characters feel, if
Right.
that makes sense.
Sure.
Like, for example, Sean is riding his motorcycle in Special Forces 1, which I could talk about because it's out.
Mhm.
Right? Special Forces 2 is not out yet, so I won't spoil it.
Well, I'm sure riding a
but
motorcycle isn't exactly considered a spoiler, but
Well, he's on the run, right?
fair.
So Sean is on the run from people. He's riding his motorcycle, and he has to break through to the highway. And to do this, he crashes through a thicket of trees and is riding through the trees trying to avoid it.
Mhm.
So one thing I figured out that kind of helped me in writing these action scenes is Sean is describing the feeling of the trees that are whipping him. He is describing, the cold biting into him, the blinding of the headlights behind him, and then when he crashes, he describes, going flying, hitting the road, having incredible sharp pain when he wakes up. He realizes that the back of his head is bleeding. He's feeling woozy,
Mhm.
can barely move after he crashes. When people start dying, he describes how they fall to the ground, what it looks like with their bodies there,
Right.
how they die, describes in some graphic detail,
Mhm.
and this is how that action hits home, right?
Sure.
Describing that graphic detail and describing, how Sean is feeling, and I mean like literally physically feeling,
Right.
not emotionally, although that's part of it, but
Sure.
literally like physically, how is this affecting him?
Right.
So this was something I figured out actually after Grim Tidings, which was a story in season 1 that I wrote, and I
Mhm.
was very unhappy with, and I told Ben so, and I said, like, John crashes his car at the beginning of Grim Tidings,
Mhm.
and I told Ben, I wrote this car crash scene, and I don't like it.
Mhm.
I don't know what to do about it. And Ben goes, like, there are bones here, I could work with it. And Ben kind of rewrote the scene from the bones. Just
Right.
that most of Grim Tidings was mine, but Ben rewrote that section of it, more or less. And his rewritten version was much better. And the main difference that, the main things that he changed were that Sean was describing, the jostling of the car, like
Right.
branches hitting him, slamming into the side of the car. Like he was
Mhm.
describing all of this stuff happening to him and how it was affecting him.
Mm.
And that made a huge difference in how that scene hit and how visceral it felt.
Sure, it makes
So,
sense.
and that's a very dry description. It's one of those things that sadly we cannot describe very, shall we say, excitingly, because this is the chopping of the butcher, if you get me. the sausage being made. So it's
Mm.
even though it's a very exciting car crash, we can only describe it clinically.
By the way, you did a good job with it.
Thank
Sure.
you.
Also, I hadn't even considered this, but when you mentioned evil doppelganger and said, "Well, of course we're pulp, so we've got to include an evil doppelganger," I didn't even realize, but Jim is literally an evil twin, or has an evil twin. Didn't even make any kind of pulp connection there.
Don't
Perfect.
worry, it's been noticed by others.
Oh, tragedy. I'm sorry, I wasn't trying to be a cliche.
No, it's fine. It's fine. I want cliche. Cliche's good sometimes. Just the right amount of cliche. It's
Then,
like a
yes,
spoonful
a
of
little bit
sugar, and now Disney will have us forever. Sorry.
I don't know. You got to do at least 5 seconds.
Okay, good.
Yes. I
That's
tell
a
you,
relief.
great personal
Otherwise,
experience
so many
there.
people who would have otherwise seen the stream would never have seen it.
Yes, very accurate.
Guy in a mouse costume just randomly breaks my legs.
Well, hi there, Ben.
Turns
No,
out
it's Mickey
my
Mouse
intellectual
listening with a little
property.
timer next to him. Stops at 2 seconds, stares down at the stopwatch, looks at the stream, blinks off.
That's right.
so close
gee,
yet so far. We'll have another conversation again sometime soon.
No, I'm just kidding. If Disney wanted to shut us down, they would just claim that it was a copyright strike anyway, and then it would take us 6 months to get back up.
Yeah.
Anyway, because YouTube just automatically assumes that anytime somebody claims copyright strike, that's valid.
Exactly.
Yeah.
I can guarantee that from personal experience with Disney.
And YouTube.
Yes, exactly right.
The thing is that, like, the vast majority of stuff that gets copyright struck is 100% fair use, no matter
Oh,
what
yeah.
they're in it. Like,
Absolutely.
Sideways got his review of Cats struck down because he was including long clips from the movie. Except,
Who?
do you know the YouTuber Sideways by any chance?
No.
He does musical stuff.
Yeah.
He's for
okay.
music
I
nerds.
really highly
Yeah, I was about to say, I'm really not into musicals there, Anthony.
No, it's not just musicals, music in movies. I actually very much recommend him. He did
Wait. I remember him, I think. I watched him do something on Cats. He ridiculed it.
Yeah, that's what I'm referring to.
Oh,
so
wonderful.
he did a video on Cats. The music in Cats is worse than you think. And
Yes.
if you watch the original video and watch the current version, you will notice that the current version of the video has long portions of the music like cut out.
Right.
For copyright reasons. But of course, if you know anything about copyright law, and I mean really anything, this is absolutely absurd because it's very, very obvious listening to the video that the point of the video is both review and education, both of which are very much underneath fair use.
Yes.
So he absolutely had as much right as anybody, had 100% the right to use clips from the movie.
Yes.
And even like minute-long clips. He wasn't
Yes.
showing the entire movie.
Sure.
Which he absolutely had the right to do to make his point. The fact that they made him cut sections out of it is totally absurd and is completely against fair use.
Yes.
But, you know, us little people, it costs it would take us months and months of time to dispute, and it's possible that we might lose, and they have an army of lawyers, and we're just on our own.
That's right.
Even those months and months of time of that video not being up, you're not making money on it anyway, so it's easier to just listen.
Yeah,
and
exactly.
It's a totally broken system, and it's disgusting. And the fact it's really YouTube's fault more than these companies, because YouTube should have actual human beings look at these, and they should say, like, you know, instead of assuming that it's the big companies that are right, that's really not how it should work. But it's also hard to see, like, how you could fix it, because the flip side of this is you have to assume that, because if you're wrong, then YouTube gets sued.
Yes.
So, you know, it's difficult, but it's a joke. Like, everybody is at fault here, except the original creators. The original creators are absolutely not at fault because they're fair use and they're well within the realms of the law. You know.
That's why I keep up with the parodies, because eventually I figure the Supreme Court will justify me.
Yeah, then parody is 100% fair use. There is absolutely nothing that they could legally do about it.
Exactly.
They do anyway. And YouTube
Family Guy actually
eat it.
has stuff on it. Like, they will do a thing where it's like, oh yes, fair use, and then Peter Griffin defines it, and the commentary we're providing here today is that Walt Disney hated the Jews. Thank you. Now back to your show. And then he like goes like straight back to whatever like was the A plot of the episode after having a cutaway and then another cutaway explaining how they can't be sued for saying that. It's like, yeah, all right. Thank you, Fox executives.
Family Guy.
Yes.
I
yes.
truly hate that show.
I remember I watched the first season, thought it was okay, and then it just descended further and further into madness after it got canceled the first time and brought back.
That's funny. Oh,
Yeah.
and speaking of that, John DiMaggio's back in Futurama.
Oh,
Okay.
wonderful. That's going to be terrible.
It will be, yes.
Much like the Futurama episodes weren't very good once they went back to Comedy Central, I really don't think Matt Groening can keep good comedy going.
I don't know how fair that is. I mean, The Simpsons lasted a solid 10 years of being good.
Sure.
I mean, that's a long time. Yeah. And Futurama did not last as long, though I would argue that Futurama was always in its prime better than The Simpsons. But the flip side of this is that I don't think the Comedy Central era was really that bad. And it had some brilliant episodes. Like, the late Philip J. Fry is one of my all-time favorite episodes.
Oh, absolutely. That one's amazing. One of my favorites also. But I will say that the Comedy Central episodes may have had some of the better episodes, but also had many of the worst. For instance, that terrible episode where they go to Da Vinci's planet. I hate that episode so much. I skip it every time I come across it.
I didn't watch all of it, but you're right. You're absolutely correct about that. With that said, the Comedy Central stuff, like it did give us the late Philip J. Fry.
Yep.
Which
it gave us one of the best series finales ever.
What's it called? Something?
Somewhere or some thing or something like that. Some Wither.
Yeah. Some Wither, right?
Exactly.
Somewhere or something. But it was you're right, it was very good. Now, was it better than the first season finale, The Devil's Hands Are Idle Playthings? Probably not.
Yeah.
But it was very good.
Yes.
It was very, very good.
Yeah.
Greatly enjoyed it. And The Prisoner of Benda is incredible.
Which one was that one?
When they all swap bodies.
Oh, yeah, that was pretty good. I like that one.
I love that episode. I love the relation. I love when, what's it called? Wash Bucket gets stuck in the body of Amy. And tries to have her with the janitor.
That was hilarious. Scruffy! Wash Bucket, we can't do this. But Scruffy, no! I'm sorry, Wash Bucket.
But you're a janitor, and I'm a janitor. You're a wash bucket. Will never work.
You're a piece of janitorial equipment. I'm sorry. Just go. Just go. Oh, such great times.
But yeah, you're right. It was 100%. It was not as good as the original era, but it did have, like, Philip J. Fry. The late Philip J. Fry might be like my second or third favorite episode of the show.
Yeah, I can see that.
I love that episode.
There's
my favorite is Roswell That Ends Well, which just like makes me cry laughing every time I see it.
Okay, I'll give you this very funny episode, but for me, I love the sentimentality of their good episodes.
It's true that it's not the most sentimental. Like The Luck of the Fryrish, the ending always makes me kind of tear up. I gotta admit.
I have a little bit hard time with that because I don't have siblings, so except for the one that I ate in utero, so I don't really have any kind of sentiment that way.
Keep talking about a traumatic incident in your young life, why don't you?
We are not going to elaborate on that plot. Like, let's just not elaborate. We'll just leave that.
No, just leave it. It's a lot funnier.
Yeah. Then you try and figure it out. Anyway, but anyway, yeah, Luck of the Fryrish always makes me tear up a little bit. I haven't even watched the dog episode. You've
never seen Jurassic Park?
I don't want to.
Oh, it's so good.
It just sounds depressing.
It's depressing, but it's also very funny. Like they did an excellent job balancing out, like Futurama always did. Same with Game of Tones, which is very emotional, but also very good.
Yeah. It's a little
Yeah.
schmaltzy. Not
A
my
little
favorite.
small. Yeah, a little bit.
Uh,
I can do that.
what else were the great Futuramas, like the truly great?
Mhm.
The ones that were great at balancing, that balancing act, right?
Yeah.
Godzilla's did not have that balancing act of sentimentality, but it was a surprisingly profound episode,
Which
in
one was
my
it?
opinion.
Remind me of
Godzilla's
those.
one with
Yeah.
when Bender becomes God.
Oh yeah. That had some really highs and some kind of a couple of lows. Pretty much everything on Earth I thought was pretty dumb, but watching
Oh, I
Bender
thought
try
some of
to
those gags were really funny. I love the cult that was searching for God in the stars, and I love the gag where they have the guy just looking at the telescope going, no, 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 and then the one
that
guy
was a
goes,
pretty good joke.
oh, wait, here it is, and he goes, oh, never mind, no, I was wrong.
Yes, yeah, that was a pretty good gag.
And then
Yeah,
uh, let's see, I liked the stuff with Bender, though, and the little aliens that were living on him was great.
yes,
Just really funny, and very clever.
yeah.
Uh,
Mom, you're hugging God. Oh no!
the one commandment is God wants beer.
That's right. Yes. Good times.
Let's see, there was Sting was pretty good at that balance of sentimentality. That was the one where Fry dies and then Leela kind of
Oh
loses her
yeah,
mind.
I liked that one a lot.
That's a good episode. They keep up like the Fry is dead thing for like a long time in that. Like they really don't reverse it till like the very end.
Also, that episode did a very good job of building realistic tension. Like Fry can't die because this is a show, and
Yeah,
it's not like Game of Thrones where people can just come and go at will. They did an excellent job stringing you along, not just thinking, "Whoa, maybe he actually is dead," but also making you feel the ramifications and making you feel with Leela that you were going insane.
well, the other thing it does a really great job of doing, I think, and this is why it's one of the better episodes of the show, is that there's like a genuine, an honest portrayal of grief in that episode.
Yeah.
Like,
I hate to say this, but the actress who played Leela was never really the strongest actor, but in that one, she really gave a good performance. I think for the first time in
she did.
her tenure.
So
how do you guys take this stuff and transfer it into your skills for writing Pinkerton's Ghosts?
I will. See, the thing that I think made Futurama, this is the last thing I'll say about it, 'cause I know Ben's trying to cut off the discussion, and I understand why, so this is the last thing I'll say, I promise. The one thing about Futurama that, like, I think really made it a great show is that it starts off with this very cynical view, right?
Yeah.
Fry's life is miserable, and Fry's happy about waking up 1,000 years in the future, only things aren't really that different. But the true genius of Futurama is the slow reveal that they're very consistent about that Fry's attitude about his former life was actually wrong. That Fry, like, the issue was not that his life was miserable and Fry was a loser. The issue was actually that Fry never properly appreciated all of the good things he had.
Oh my God! It's a wonderful life.
Kinda,
No,
like that.
you're living in
seriously, I really
2000s
appreciate
America.
that about the show. Like, I legitimately appreciated that about the show. It made it like it was a surprisingly profound point about Futurama. Like it starts off, you think it's gonna be like just a cynical take on early 20th century. Then you learn like no, Fry had a family that loved him. Fry had a brother that loved him that he never fully appreciated. That he had his dog appreciated him even more than he thought. And slowly, Fry kind of learns that like the life that he left behind was actually a life.
Right.
That there's a genuine sacrifice there that he was forced to make. Like,
He was right about his girlfriend, though. She was absolutely a slut.
She was, yeah. That. I mean, I guess that not everything was perfect, but that's not the point. The point wasn't that it was perfect. The point was that he had a life. Like, if that makes sense.
Right.
How
does that translate to us? Oh,
that
goodness.
Translate to us. I think that translates to us in that as we write our show, it's important that we take the struggles of our characters seriously. With that said, I think we are doing that. Futurama was unique in this regard in that it was a comedy, so in point of fact, it didn't really have to, and it could still be funny. Roswell that ends well great example of this. Nothing in that episode is taken seriously, and it absolutely cracks me up. It is my favorite episode of the show. And however, what made it special was that it did take it seriously sometimes, and that when it did, it actually worked more often than not. Even the late Philip J. Fry did it. Yeah, when they had that moment where Leela sees the message that Fry left for her. Yeah, like it's actually a genuinely sad, genuinely kind of touching moment.
Right.
In terms of our writing, like I think that the important thing to take out of what Futurama did well in its prime and in its best episodes is to take the struggles and the emotions of our characters and treat them with actual dignity.
And also, I think we can learn an important lesson from the ones that failed. The episodes that weren't nearly as strong as they could have been, and try and figure out, okay, what exactly did they do wrong here? And personally, I think a lot of it is they tried too hard.
Yeah.
Be something they weren't.
Early on with those episodes, there was almost an effortlessness to it, and I think the reason it was effortless too is that you genuinely in those early episodes, like, it did not need to go that hard, right? Like,
Right.
Luck of the Fryrish, that ending of Luck of the Fryrish, man, gets me every time.
Sure.
But one of the reasons it gets you is that they 100% didn't need to go there, but they did.
Right.
Now,
By the same token,
season,
Jurassic Park.
So, yeah, exactly. But by the later seasons, everybody's expecting it, so now they think they need to have those emotional moments, and it becomes forced.
Right.
You get this in the episode with Bender when they learn that, like, when Hermes and Bender like try and figure out who was the guy who messed up his creation, and it turns out, that it was actually Hermes, and he did it to keep Bender alive. I guess it was kind of touching, but it was also a little bit forced. It was a little schmaltzy.
Right.
Like,
and you can tell by the song they used for that one is a schmaltzy song, deliberately.
Yeah, Game of Tones is another example. It becomes forced.
Yes. Yeah, and it also played really hard into.
Yeah, exactly.
No, like they were trying for a parody of Star Wars or Star Trek, the fourth movie, and they tried too poorly. Like they were trying to cram too much into it.
Yeah. It's kind of wild to think that episode was called Game of Tones, meaning that when Futurama was last on and popular, Game of Thrones was also popular enough for them to parody. I think of
the books. It was the book. The series wasn't out at the time.
Was it not? I don't know.
No, I don't believe it was.
It's kind of wild. Futurama's been around for a long time now at this point.
Oh yeah.
And you don't realize it.
Yeah, it's a surprisingly old show.
I am barely older than The Simpsons. Not even all Simpsons media, just The Simpsons show on Fox.
Wow.
Barely.
Can you tell if that makes you really old or The Simpsons really old?
Since The Simpsons ended 20 years ago, we're all old.
Yes, exactly true.
I sometimes think about all the resources that things like The Simpsons and Family Guy take, and it's like,
yes,
it is pretty sad. The flip side, you get like consistent but rarely great shows like Bob's Burgers.
Right.
And I think Bob's Burgers has its great episodes, but not that many.
I'll give Bob's Burgers. It's funny. It's not great, but it's funny.
I think Equestronauts is incredible. That episode absolutely cracks me up every time.
Oh yeah, I agree. That was hysterical.
But so Bob's Burgers definitely has its moments, but it's also never been as good as like prime peak Futurama.
Sure.
Yeah.
Or even peak Simpsons.
And to be honest, I actually think Bob's Burgers is still good. Like I watched one of the new season episodes the other day, and I was still laughing at it, which is impressive.
Sure.
It's very impressive. And then you get like American Dad, which I've always said has somewhere between like 1 in every 3 or 2 in every 5 episodes is funny.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Fair.
Like I don't actually think the show is very good, but every now and then an episode comes out that cracks me up. Like the Hurricane episode, I think is hysterical.
I think I've seen maybe 3 episodes of the show. Because it fell right into the same top plot line or same timeline as Family Guy, and I just lost all interest in those shows.
You are absolutely right to do so. But American Dad has its moments. Like one of my favorite, the Hurricane episode of American Dad is very funny. That's when a hurricane like wipes out their town and floods their house.
Hmm.
And the joke of the episode is that Stan fails at everything, and all of his ideas are bad.
Hmm.
So I don't know. I don't know how to describe it. It's not like high art or anything. It's not
Oh, gee,
very.
another show where the dad is the buffoon.
Yeah, no, it's 100%. I'm not going to defend it on those grounds.
Yeah,
But
fair.
the jokes got so absurd that it got pretty funny. Like at the
Mm.
end of the episode, they're being attacked by sharks in the home, and then like Stan shows up and goes, "Don't worry, I've run in the bear because the bear is the shark's natural enemy." It's like a bear on a raft. And then the bear looks at the shark, and then they start attacking the family. And the son yells, "They're working in tandem." That made me laugh. And then he goes, "Wait a minute, I could save them." And he grabs a javelin, and his wife is going, "Stan, wait, don't throw the javelin. Literally everything you have done has been a mistake." So he throws the javelin, and he hits her in the shoulder. And then she
Aw.
goes, "Harpooned me. I told you not to throw the javelin, and you harpooned me." The the whole episode's just like a series of escalating insanity, and it does a typical, the dad is stupid joke, but it makes it so ludicrous that you kind of have to laugh at it.
Fair enough. I have a
Uh,
Pinkerton's Ghost question on this
Hmm.
Pinkerton's Ghost stream.
really
Ben. Yeah, I know,
shocking.
I know, right? So, the last 3 episodes that we have released have been for the Patreon supporters, have been my mega episode. And for the regular listeners, it has been your Wild Hunt episode. Ben,
Hmm.
since we didn't really have an opportunity, I don't remember or think, to talk about the Wild Hunt when it first came out, would you be willing to talk about it now for the benefit of the audience?
Ooh,
Yes.
good call.
No.
Thank you.
Have a
Oh.
good night, guys. We'll see you next. No, I'm kidding.
Da 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 da.
No. So the Wild Hunt, Jack Morrow is coerced, we'll say, by
Mm.
an elf nobleman to perform in the Wild Hunt as a living quarry. This version of the Wild Hunt is not necessarily the European version, but rather an explicit, shall we say, most dangerous game thrown by the elves and gods
Mm.
for the entertainment of the immortals,
Mm.
who may only entertain their jaded sensibilities with blood and violence.
As you do.
As you do. If I was 1,000 years old, I'd be pretty jaded to everything too.
Oh, yeah.
I go through it. I carefully structure it so it has 5 different opponents. The first one is Liber de Mont,
Mhm.
and perhaps there's spoilers around him. The second one is Artemis, as in the goddess, who, the demon, in fact, who has unfortunately taking a shining to Jack, who is quite the hunter himself,
Ooh.
being sort of an Orion of his times.
Sure.
Then we have I can't remember his name, but he rides a mammoth with a blind, mad violinist on top of the howdah. Point is that you won't be disappointed in by any means at all. After that is Imran Goddaughter, who leads an army of insects and spiders, and is actually terrifying.
Oh,
Like
yes.
I almost changed an entire section just because I had a spider crawl into his car, and Jack had to beat it to death with his shotgun. And I was like, maybe this is too much. Maybe I've gone too far with this one. No, not the bloody murder, not the explicit deaths and all that jazz, but the spider in the car.
The spiders,
Terrifying.
what did it?
Uh,
Finally,
uh,
is there such a thing as excess?
finally, I understand. Finally, and it's like, no, not really. I don't.
No, of course
So,
not.
but uh, trying to think. Uh, yeah, and then after that is the last one, Mordred Padam, as in
Mhm.
Mordred, who betrayed Arthur and fought him at Camlin Hill. He survived the encounter by strange and mysterious means. Some rumors say it was a dark pact. Other rumors say that his spirit overwhelmed the spirit of his son and took his son's body to um, live some more, but he keeps his own secrets.
As he should.
This is, I do want to say that, like, I know that a lot of, shall we say, reasonable portrayals of Mordred have him as like a mama's boy, a weak little gamma and stuff like that, but to me that's never quite sat right. Like,
Mhm.
he is in a martial society. He could
Right.
eat the lunch of every alpha I've ever thrown out of the bar I work at. You know,
Sure.
like, it's one of those things where, like, his gamma is our alpha. Like, sure, he did some things, supposedly, depending on which version. You know, some versions he went after Guinevere, other versions he threw her in prison. You know, like, there's a bit of variety for, you know, whatever your sensibility is.
Hmm.
Um, but in the grand scheme of things, the focus isn't on his relationship with Guinevere or Arthur or whatever. I'm sorry, not Arthur. On Guinevere and the other things, it's his sort of lust for power.
Right.
Whether it's been bred into him by his mother, as some versions would say, or whether it's natural ambition that just needed a little, you know, push, a little bit of the right motivation, so to say.
Sure.
You know, there's a whole lot to it. And I kind of wanted to portray that. How, let's say that, you know, in the end, that Mordred, um, Mordred, you know, survived his encounter. Well, how would he act? How would he think about these things? Well, his motivation would essentially be to, you know, stay alive, keep himself entertained, work with other people towards whatever purpose he set for himself.
Hmm.
And I imply very straightforwardly that his motivation is more or less not to be in service to other powers. Of course, that just means he's serving the devil with extra steps, but
Sure.
I am not man enough to tell him that. Um, and anyone who is would have a short half life indeed.
Right.
Uh, Partially because he has that sort of like defy everything motivation. But it's more than just like defy everything, because that's not accurate to what it is. It's like saying non serviam, but more or less I want to dethrone God, more I am self sufficient.
Mm.
Which is very, shall we say, it's not it's something a Christian has to look out for. Basically, we have a whole bunch of things that go on in our life that can tempt us and move us away from a relationship with God. Right now, I'm working on my prayer life. I feel that for some of the things that are interfering with my day to day and my, you know, ability to live a holy life can be solved if I upgrade my prayer life.
Hmm.
Whether or not that's accurate is beyond the point. Prayer is always a good thing. By the way,
Sure.
we only have a few more minutes. I only have about an hour I can provide here.
Hey, that's
Uh,
totally fine.
the Besides, I'm actually am quite tired. We will do this in April though, and give a proper stream. Um, but it's like, if I can do this thing, I am not self-sufficient for my spiritual needs. I need to make sure I'm going to church. I need to make sure I have a relationship with my pastor. I need to make sure that I'm reading my Bible and praying. He wouldn't have that same motivation. You know, if Morgana betrayed him, you know, even though she's his auntie,
Right.
uh you know, she would quickly find out that he's actually far more, you know, shall we say, not dependent on her than she thought. The same
Right.
with other things who think they might, you know, control him. I'm going to have him show up in a novel, and everyone's, because they had a thing that said, you know, toot this horn and a knight of Arthur shall help the house of whatever, you know. shall show up, and they go, "Oh, okay," So they toot the horn, and it's like maybe Arthur will come. It's the Battle of Britain. It's our darkest hour, and it's Mordred
Right.
because he's the only still conscious knight of Camelot still roaming around.
Mhm.
At least he's the one that was called. If there are others, depends on how you connect the Swan Knight's son to the Pinkerton's ghost universe. I'm
We connect.
certain. I don't think so. We certainly haven't made any moves about that at all. But certainly nothing. I don't have any permission to say these things. But but anyway, point is that I took the character and I pushed him on, made him above Jack Morrow, and made sure that the threat was there and had its claws out, which isn't always, shall we say, obvious in the events of a person's life. I am always thinking about my spiritual nature, my spiritual needs, and my relationship to God. I do best when I'm praying and singing and praising and so on and so forth, no matter what I'm doing or what I'm feeling. I had to, I was very sick. I should have gone to the hospital several times, but I didn't.
Yes, and you should go to the
Yeah.
hospital.
No, I shouldn't have. I didn't have
All
health
of your
insurance.
friends told you.
And I'm like, nope, I'm gonna push through, and I did. Thus, learning no lessons at all about my physical body, but I learned some lessons about my spiritual nature. And it's one of those things where it's like, all right, I'm gonna try and actually learn the lesson this time. And of course, I'm not actually going to learn the lesson.
No, of
I'm just
course
gonna
not.
make a good go at it as long as I can.
Bid's guardian angel is just floating above him, head held in hands.
Right, exactly. But that's neither here nor there. My guardian angel is probably fine, mostly, hopefully. He's just
Probably.
beefy. He's as beefy as I am. So
Oh dear.
He's had
anyway,
he's definitely had the experience.
so let's see here. So going on from that, do you have any final words for us as we close out our hour?
Drink more Ovaltine.
No, stop it. It's not even being made anymore.
Eh,
Yes, it is.
really?
I
Yeah,
don't
since
know.
when?
Yeah,
I don't know. I
Ovaltine.
assumed it was. I assumed it was defunct. All right,
No,
Ken,
no.
your turn.
I'm memeing a movie I don't even like that much.
Next Monday, I want to say 21st, I am releasing the Kickstarter for the next installment of King of the World. It's going to be bigger and far more ambitious than the previous one. Whereas our first video was 4 minutes long and covered a single song, our second is going to be 30 minutes, 30-minute videos that will have 4 main characters and cover 5 different parodied songs.
Amazing.
Yes. I'll make sure to post all links, and when it actually gets revealed, I'm going to make sure to bring it to you, good, fine folks.
Absolutely. Well,
Brilliant.
thank you both for joining us. Next month, we will be doing this properly, and I'll have more of a poobah to it. I will also try to be less exhausted. But
Yeah,
Don't make
how dare you?
no joy for that though. I am instead going to leave you guys with thank you for supporting us. I hope the people who subscribe to us come to one of these things sometime. But no pressure. We do these because we love you. And we love the fact that you pay us, but we love you, and we will continue to produce great content, the likes of which the world has never seen before, for the simple reason is that we are not hacks, and we are men of workmanship like mean. And I mean that MEN. There we go. Words. Have a good night.